And we'll start with page 34, Colonel Conger. BMW bicycles.
Good afternoon, Councilman.
Good afternoon.
I'm sorry, I'm having a little bit of computer problem here. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. We can hear you. Colonel, we can hear you fine. Speak, Colonel, we can hear you.
He's
Colonel, can you hear us or do you need me to jump in? All right, sir. I don't have the paperwork directly in front of me, but this is in reference to authorizing the county to accept a donation of 4 BMW electric bicycles that were donated to us by BMW of North America. And these bicycles will be utilized in the community, in the Dundalk area of the community, where obviously we continue to have a partnership with TradePoint Atlantic. So I don't, again, have other details, and I'm sure when the Colonel jumps back on, he can fill in those blanks. But this was a really helpful donation for us. As we know, one of our goals is getting police officers out into the community, and getting them out there on bicycles is a fantastic way to do it.
Okay, thank you. If the Colonel is not here yet, we will. Any questions or comments about the bicycles? We had extensive testimony about the bikes, what they're going to be used for, and we even put a bid in.
All right, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Yes, I'm sorry. So I don't know if I misunderstood or not. Are the 4 bicycles just to be used in the TradePoint Atlantic area?
No, absolutely not. Obviously, that's where BMW is located. They're going to be utilized out in the community. Thank you.
Oh,
I just
okay, great.
clarified that.
I thought I misunderstood. Thank you.
Sure.
Any additional questions or
I'm
comments?
sorry, Chief, where did you say they were being used? What community did you say they were being used?
They're going to be used throughout, but they're going to be primarily utilized on the east side of the county.
Okay, I was just curious if this can be replicated in other areas of the county. It seems like a good way to have police close to communities where there may be criminal activity.
Absolutely. And, you know, it's something that we strive to be able to do to really replicate across Baltimore County. Certainly a great tool with crime, but also just a really good tool for engaging with the public in communities and business areas. And it gives us another tool to utilize for large scale special events, community events, parades like that, so that way we can move our officers around faster.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right. Any additional questions or comments? Thank you very much, Chief. We'll move on to page 22. State's Attorney's Office, Miss Amanda Grantham.
Chairman Jones, members of the council, Scott Schellenberger. I'm here with Amanda Grantham, who's my victim witness coordinator, and my office administrator, Cheryl Rill. Shall I go ahead and explain what we're trying to do here?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so this is to have a 5-year contract with a counselor. Her name is Ellen Patterson. Ms. Patterson has been offering counseling to victims, witnesses, and family members, typically of violent crimes, for the Baltimore County State's Attorney's Office since 1998. The contract typically runs 5 years, and that's what we're seeking now. Ms. Patterson offers a great deal of assistance, helping prepare family members for court and getting them ready for what they're going to face in court. This has been particularly needed because many family members will be watching body cameras for the first time, either in a courtroom or what we typically do is have Ms. Patterson prepare them to be able to watch them privately before they go to the courtroom and see it publicly. So the contract runs for 5 years. We usually are limited to paying $25,000 per year. Like I said, we've had this contract and Ms. Patterson since 1998. She's incredibly dedicated, does a terrific job, and we certainly would like to continue. And I have the experts here if you have any specific questions.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Schellenberger. Any questions or comments from the members? Thank you very much. Good job. We thank you very much, Ms. Patterson. Next, we'll move on to page 26. Seth Blumen, Energy and Sustainability Coordinator.
Good afternoon, Council. The memorandum of understanding is proposed between Maryland Clean Energy Center on the county for the purpose of providing technical and analytical support to assist in the evaluation, development, and implementation of energy-related projects and programs. Maryland Clean Energy Center is a quasi-government organization authorized by state statute to facilitate public-private partnerships and provide financing for energy efficiency and clean energy. Maryland Clean Energy Center's expertise in the relevant areas and their work with 10 other Maryland jurisdictions via current and ongoing contracts will allow the county to align itself with the strategic approaches being used to advance energy and sustainability. Baltimore County has requested that MCEC, or Maryland Clean Energy Center, provide expertise in order to evaluate, develop, and potentially implement certain initiatives, which may include technical and analytical support in electric vehicle infrastructure development, meaning EV charging stations, procurement strategy for on-site renewable energy power purchase agreements, meaning if we do additional solar agreements, evaluating financing options for energy performance contracts, and life cycle assessment of major equipment replacements. The proposed MOU will establish terms and conditions for MCEC to provide consultation to the county for a period of 5 years. The parties have the option to extend the MOU for a term of up to 180 additional days on the same set of terms and conditions. So that concludes my remarks, and I can take any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments from the members? Hearing none. Thank you very much, Seth.
Thank you.
Next, we'll move on to page 29. Ms. Deb Schindel. Contract with On Call Architectural Design.
Good evening, sir, and County Council. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Wonderful. The administration is requesting approval of 5 on-call architectural design service contracts. This contract was competitively bid through the PSSC, which is our Professional Service Selection Committee. The committee chose 2 Tier 1 consultants, Mans Woodward Studios, Inc., and Walden Studios, Architects and Planners, PCs, and 3 Tier 2 architectural firms, Grimm & Parker Architectural, Murray and Diffenhofer, and Quinn Evans Architect for this on-call service. The maximum amount payable by the county under this agreement shall not exceed the price of $2 million for each Tier 1 and $5 million for Tier 2 for each consultant selected. I would like to let you know how we're going to utilize this contract. It's a very important contract, as you know, when we go to renovate or redesign new buildings or when we are replacing mechanical systems. Our goal under these contracts and why there were so many is that we are going to, because we have a variety of vendors or consultants that have various skill sets and experience. For example, there are some that specialize or have extensive experience in the public safety, so that when we go to build the firehouse or a police center, we're hiring someone that has extensive background. Some other vendors may have extensive background in libraries and rec center. So that is why we chose to pick at least 5 vendors with a variety of background. In the Tier 1 contracts, Anyone that is approximately 300,000, any job 300,000 or less, they will handle. And any job that is going to cost more than 300,000 will be given to our tier 2 vendors. The MBE on this is 20%. And I am willing to take any questions that anyone has. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shendo. Any questions or comments from the members?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Councilman Patoka.
Thank you. Ms. Schindel, are these architectural firms, are they doing full design or are they doing design review of
Fine, sir, they can
full
do,
design?
yep, they'll do conceptual if requested and conceptual and full-blown design so that we can
Okay.
take it out for a bid package.
Okay, interesting. Also, do they do construction management as well?
Yes, that is part of their package.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any additional questions or comments from the members? Thank you very much, Ms. Shindle.
You're welcome. Have a
Thank you. We'll move on to page 5, Bill 2322. Terry Hickey.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the council. I'm here on behalf of the administration requesting a supplemental appropriation of federal funds totaling $7,471,986 from the Home ARP program that's part of the American Recovery Plan Act. These funds are going to be used to plan for and provide housing and rental assistance and supportive services to vulnerable populations, including individuals experiencing or at risk of homelessness. Specific activities can include the production or preservation of housing, tenant-based rental assistance, supportive services, including homeless prevention services, and the purchase or development of non-congregate shelters, including emergency shelter, permanent housing, or affordable housing. The county is required by HUD to develop an allocation plan in advance, which kicked off with our first public meeting today. That has to be submitted to HUD for approval by December 31st. The planning process will help determine publicly the recommended use of the funds and the anticipated number of clients that will be able to serve with this, one of the last critical chunks of ARPA funding that we can use on this population. So we're looking to do right by this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hickey. Any questions or comments from the members? All right. Well, we thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we'll move on to page 12. Ms. Deandra Walker, Bill 2522.
Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the council. Today, the administration is introducing the 2022 Basic Services Map. Article 4A of the Baltimore County zoning regulations set out the provisions for growth management in Baltimore County. The growth management provisions are designed to facilitate implementation of the master plan with specific regard to the quality and timing of new growth and development. Our basic services maps are designed to aid the county in providing public water, sewer, and transportation in an amount that facilitates the level of growth allowed by the current zoning. The growth management system applies inside the ERDL. It's important to note that the law requires the council to take legislation action on the maps after consideration of the planning board recommendations, which we have met with the planning board and they have had a public meeting, and we have also had a public meeting here with the council as well. So with that, I will take any questions that you may have.
Any questions or comments from the members? Thank you for the extensive presentation you gave us earlier today, Ms. Walker. So I guess you answered all the questions. We thank you so much for being here again today. Joined us 2 times today. All right, now we will move on to page number 1. Chief Melissa Hyatt, Bill 14-22, abatement of public nuisance.
Good afternoon, councilmen and council members. Thank you for having me again. I'm here on behalf of the administration to present Council Bill 1422, which would make updates to the existing statute related to the abatement of public nuisances. And as you're all aware, the current statute allows for the chief of police, in order to discontinue a public nuisance on an affected premises, permits the closing of the premises to the extent necessary to abate the nuisance. Unfortunately, as the statute currently exists, it's not usable for addressing the issues that we're currently facing in Baltimore County. And the current threshold of 2 or more criminal convictions allows the negligent business owners, which again are a diminutive number compared to our number of business operators, but it can take months or even years of continued activity before we can take any kind of action. The current list also does not include crimes such as crimes of violence. The administration has received significant positive feedback from community members and from business entities that improving this law can assist us in addressing those very small number of establishments that aren't cooperating to address safety guidelines or are blatantly violating the law and impacting the health and wellness of surrounding communities. Unfortunately, when we can't resolve these issues, my only solution is to pull police officers out of patrolling the community and responding to calls for service in the neighborhoods to essentially babysit a small number of establishments that are disregarding public safety. We really appreciate the robust discussion that's occurred on this bill, and really a special thank you to the council for the extended time frame to allow us to continue to work through additional changes to legislation. We do believe that the amendments that we've put forward will result in legislation that provides the police department with another critical tool to help make the community safer, while also, and just as importantly, ensuring that there's significant and appropriate consideration to due process for business owners. A couple of weeks ago, Colonel Conger did a very detailed walkthrough of most of the proposed changes at the first work session. So instead of going into depth through that, I'm just going to touch on a few of the significant amendments, and then my team and I are available to answer any questions and concerns that would be helpful in your deliberations. In terms of the most significant amendments, the scope of the legislation has been narrowed to make sure that we're not inadvertently applying the law to cooperative and upstanding business owners who may happen to have a crime that occurs on or near their property. The proposed change would specify that an abatement or a closure could only apply if that establishment is used for business activity that generates or contributes to a public nuisance. And again, that burden would be on the police department to prove that. The chief of police could ask for abatement, triggering a hearing at the Office of Administrative Hearings. And at the hearing, the police department would need to produce 2 police reports within the past 12 months describing how the premises were used for business activity that generated or contributed to a public nuisance, would need to provide live testimony, and would need to demonstrate by a preponderance of the evidence the existence of a public nuisance. And again, that burden would be on the police department. The administrative judge would then consider the same 4 factors: severity of the violations, good faith of the violator in following police safety and security recommendations, history of prior violations, and the impact of those violations on the community safety. The nature of those hearings has also changed significantly as a result of the input that we've received. And instead of the hearing being in front of the county administrative officer, these hearings would be held before an administrative law judge at the Office of Administrative Hearings. An ALJ ruling can then be appealed to the circuit court and then to the Court of Special Appeals. Additionally, the bill would specify that a business could ask for a stay either by the ALJ or by a court in the interest of justice. Finally, we've heard from some community members that are concerned about the equitable application of this law. And hearing these concerns, language has been added requiring the county to track data on the police chief's requests for a public nuisance hearing, and actually requires that the county council, county executive, state's attorney, and county attorney receive an annual report on that data. As several council members have noted at previous work sessions, this bill is meant to address concerns that we're hearing directly from community members. Residents are looking to us for solutions to keep their neighborhood safer, and this would be an effective tool for us to help keep the community safe in those rare times that we would need to utilize it. Again, we appreciate your consideration of Bill 1422, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, are there any questions or comments from the members?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Councilman Marks.
well, thank you very much. So I'm just going to, Chief Hyatt, I'm just going to ask you this general question because it's come up in the past 2 work sessions, I guess. What is there to stop a business that has a liquor permit? why can't that business be penalized by the liquor board? Can you address that question?
I am absolutely happy to, sir. But I'm happy to say that Mr. Mueller is on from the liquor board.
Okay,
And if
sure.
you're comfortable, I'm going to turn it over to him, and then I'm happy to answer anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Mr. Moller?
Thank you. Yep, I'm here. I had to unmute. Thank you, Chairman. Yes, Councilman Marks, great question. And as you're well familiar, yes, we can, and yes, we do. We have our rules and regulations locally as well as those in the state. Okay. However, we have evidentiary insufficiencies with a narrow, I'm trying to remember, I'll read it from my chairwoman who's an attorney, so you know I didn't make up these words. Evidentiary insufficiencies along with narrowly drafted rules that often often lend to us the inability to address serial offenders. And we're talking only the egregious. Yes, we do have our share of show causes. Yes, we can fine, suspend, and revoke. However, if we revoke, that's it. There is no coming back. And establishment owners and licensee would lose any and all value and perhaps blood, sweat, and tears that they've put into a business because it got out of hand and they lost control. So if we revoke, it's over. This proposal by the chief allows for an abatement. And again, as the chief said, I love that word diminutive. I wish I could have thought of that. We have on less than one hand, out of 804 or so licenses, less than one hand that that establishments would even rise to the level and of coming to the police chief's desk. And last but not least, if we suspend, which we have the right to do and have done, that doesn't shut a business down. Only thing we can do is stop the alcohol sales. So it doesn't necessarily stop people showing up under the influence or other influences and causing problems, even though there's no alcohol being served. So this is a great bill. It's a great tool that we could use, and we work hand in hand with the police department, and would certainly expect to continue that.
So
Thank you, Mr. Mueller.
in other words, Mr. Mueller, a business that serves liquor going through this alternative route would potentially have more due process than going through the liquor board, correct? Not due process, but an opportunity to self-correct.
Yes, and if there, we do not, let's say this, we do not have kind of double jeopardy, if you will. We don't seek out double jeopardy. If it's an egregious enough frequency and severity of problems, that's really the key. Frequency and severity. Again, we're talking about less than 5 accounts, not 5%, 5 accounts. But to the police chief's point, this is not only alcohol. Yes, we do have our local rules and we still will take our action. We're talking a higher level of problem and disruption that occurs frequently, and it's taking services out of our communities.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Marks. Any additional questions or comments from the members?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
just,
Councilman Quirk.
yeah, just very briefly and a little off topic, but since Mike Mueller was just speaking, I just wanted to recognize his great service to the county over many years. I know he's retiring in May. And so, Mike, we really do appreciate the job you've done for the county. And we want to wish you a happy retirement as well. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, for that personal privilege.
Well, thank you, Councilman Quirk, for bringing it up. Certainly agree with everything you said in terms of Mike Moeller. He's been the stand-up guy and a very steady hand at the liquor board. Someone that's been there, really dealing with an awful lot of issues. So we really appreciate you. But somebody we'd always could reach out to and get back to us in a very timely manner and work through issues. So I do have another question, but let me check with the other members first. Any additional questions or comments? I guess my question goes along with one of the ones that I guess I'm just trying to get back to. Like, I know what you said, severity and frequency. That's what you said, Mr. Moeller. I guess I'm trying to get to, let's say somebody has an establishment and someone gets into a fight in the parking lot and the police show up, they break up the fight, they make an arrest. I'm trying to get to, how do we get to, and correct me if I'm wrong, a charge of a public nuisance on the owner of the property?
It's a great question. And it happens. It does happen. And again, it's the frequency of that issue. Look, it's public record. Councilman Corcoran, thank you for those kind words. Hopefully can't see the tears underneath the glasses. That we have an establishment in our own hometown of Catonsville that in the last 8 months has been in front of the liquor board 6 times. Stabbings, bar fights. Police are there every Thursday and Saturday, or every Friday and Saturday. A patron was beaten to a near inch of his life, but it was the frequency. And the board last time was ready to suspend him, but he came, had a good defense, but there is seriousness, and I say severity and frequency. One time off, no. It's one-time events, 2-time events. We understand that.
Well, Mr. Moeller, I apologize. I really meant the question for the police chief, because I'm trying to get to when a person is charged with a public nuisance that will cause them to trigger this whole bill that we're working on. I'm just trying to get to, how does a owner of an establishment get to this place?
Yes, sir. So, and Mike, thanks for those comments. I think that we're absolutely aligned in terms of our mindset. I can tell you that, again, for those one-off, two-off, those incidents that happen that are not directly because the establishment itself is being used for an activity that's generating or contributing to a public nuisance, that's not the type of establishment that this is about. If we were to have a particular establishment, like, you know, with the continued assaults, for example, that you were just mentioning, and we do this on a daily basis anyway. We reach out to those establishments. We try to work with them. We want to sit down with them. Our goal is to work with them to make some improvements to security, whether it's sitting down and saying, have you considered this? You know, these are some of the things that we recommend. And generally, we don't talk about the ones where that happens. But, you know, we've had a couple that were very problematic for Baltimore County since I've arrived, that we really struggled to work with, but eventually we were able to work with, and we don't have issues with them anymore. They just took some basic responsibilities to make their establishments a little bit safer. But there are certainly times that, you know, something might occur outside of a business that is absolutely not under the control of the business owner or operator. And two things, you know, we don't want them to feel that they're going to be held responsible for that. And we want to encourage them to call us. We don't want them to feel that we're, you know, stacking up 911 calls that are going to be utilized against them. When they need the police, we want them to call us. This is very, very narrowly confined to those small number of businesses that when they have these continued issues and the police department does outreach to say, hey, let's sit down, let's come up with some very basic things to improve safety and security, because the safety and security of that establishment impacts the entire community. And those are the businesses that are saying, no, we're not going to close when we're supposed to close. We're not going to do these basic things. And then we're left without tools aside from pulling police officers out of the community just to babysit those establishments.
Thank you very much, Chief.
Thank you, sir.
Sure. Any additional questions or comments?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes, go right ahead, Councilman Batoken. You have something else, Mr. Councilman Marks?
Yes, one quick question.
Sure.
I'd like to expand on the chair's question about an incident that might occur at an establishment. But what if the incident is not on the property of the establishment, but as patrons might be leaving that establishment, they're on a public street and an incident occurs? Is the establishment then responsible for what happens on that public street?
We have Rule 3 in our local rules and regulations, and we use it probably more than any other rule, along with Rule 1, no sales to intoxicated people, and Rule 28, no sales to minors. So Rule 3 is used an awful lot in conjunction sometimes with those other two. Those are the big three. And Rule 3 states that you must operate your establishment in keeping basic peace, harmony, health, all those accolades, peace, health, in the neighborhood where you exist, in the neighborhood. And we know that we are, a county that's made up of an older neighborhood jurisdictions where many of our establishments are right in the middle of them. Okay. And we understand that. But it's one of those things, Councilman, that I think reasonable people can agree. Are you catering to a certain crowd, or your patrons, blaring the music every time they leave at 2 o'clock in the morning and squealing wheels or having gunfire? I'm talking about things that really rise. Nuisance is nuisance, and we can try and control that. I'm talking again, severity and frequency, gunshots, stabbings, fist fights all the time, things that really require a lot of our service people, our police men and women. But we do use Rule 3. We have used it. And our board put in a rule about 4 or 5 years ago that made it very clear that their parking lot was part of the premises. We had a couple of instances of open air drug markets going on in certain liquor establishments. And there were some great defense attorneys that put on cases that, look, this is in the parking lot. Well, the board said enough of that. And they wrote in a rule with open comments from citizens that your parking lot's part of your premises and you need to get control of it. So I hope that answers your question. We do look at that. And we do use Rule 3. We do.
Well, I appreciate that, Mr. Moeller. But let's say the establishment is outside of the scope of the liquor board. Let's say it's not an alcohol establishment. Let's say, for example, it's a hookah lounge, let's say. And so there's no liquor license related to it, but, in a hypothetical situation, patrons are leaving. Would the establishment then be responsible for patrons off-site of the premises if they're following all the other regulations that
So, Councilman,
they operate under?
So, Councilman, remember with this, the burden is on the police department to prove this, but the 4 factors that are being considered are severity of the violations, the good faith of the violator in working with the police department, in following the basic security and safety recommendations, us looking at the history of prior violations, and really the overall impact of the violations on the community. But the most important piece of this is that we need to, on the police department's end, demonstrate by a preponderance of the evidence that a public nuisance exists. And this is us proving the fact that the business itself, through the action of the business, is contributing to this. Does that make sense?
Irrespective of whether the incidents occur on the property of the business or on a public street or public property, and then how do you attribute that to a certain business?
Well, certainly through observation, it is possible that we could make an observation that activity that is occurring in a neighborhood or in a community is directly related to activity that's occurring inside of an establishment. But generally speaking, that's not what we've seen. Generally speaking, what we've seen has been activity that's occurring on a parking lot or in an area directly adjacent to a particular establishment. That's the majority of what we've seen in these situations.
If I could just ask Mr. Boswick, the language of the legislation says on the does it say on the property, or does it not? Does it distinguish whether an incident occurs on the property?
It does in kind of a direct, indirect way, Mr. Patoka. It states that, at least in the amendments that have been submitted by the administration, it defines premises as a land, a building, any structure or any interest in land, building, or structure that is used for business activity that generates or contributes to a public nuisance. So the premises itself is defined as a business activity, as land, building, structure used for business activity that generates or contributes to the public nuisance. And then later it says where there is the authority of the chief to request abatement or closure. In the next section, it states that the chief may request public nuisance hearing when there have been 2 reports by a police officer of a premises having been used for the activities described in the definition of public nuisance. And the definition of public nuisance sets forth those various crimes that are or activities that constitute a nuisance. So it dovetails with each other, that the premises, at least according to the amendments, must be used to generate the nuisance, and then the nuisance is defined as those activities.
I see. Thank you.
Councilman Patoka, if I could piggyback just briefly on the chief's statement, and just so that everyone has an understanding, more often than not, these hookah lounges allow BYOB, which we as a liquor board have no authority over. However, when you have BYOB, you are supposed to follow the state laws. And that is, no one's to get inebriated, no one's to be able to drink under 21, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so the people leaving, maybe under the influence that is causing a disturbance that was caused by the establishment. And if I could just echo what the chief said earlier about success stories, and I'm just listing them here real quick: Fishhead Cantina, Golden Dragon, Windsor Inn. We worked with those with the police for a long time. None of those accounts has been in front of the liquor board. Charles Village Pub in Towson, we worked with them forever, and they ended up, believe it or not, changing their business model. We haven't had Charles Village Pub in front of the board in a year and a half. So there are success stories. And again, I think it's a great bill that the chief will use, we'll use when necessary, but it's a tool in the kit that we need.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moeller. Any additional questions or comments from the members? Yes, Councilman Marks.
Yes, Chief Hyatt, just general question, without naming the specific properties, how does this help us deal with the Joppa Lock Raven intersection?
Without naming any specific properties, again, Councilman, this gives us another tool in our toolbox to utilize if we can't make any progress any other way. And, we remain hopeful with most of the establishments that we've had issues with, because we've been able to work with the majority of them. And again, to Mr. Muller's point earlier, it is a minuscule handful of establishments that we're simply not making progress with. And with those that we can't, this is a tool that hopefully, even without having to implement, just having establishments know that we have the ability to implement them will bring them into compliance.
I'm not going to name any of them, but I'm assuming not all the hotels have been very cooperative, correct?
We've had challenges with some. We've had others that have been very cooperative. So, it's a bit of a balance.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, any additional questions or comments? Because I know we have some speakers. Okay, we'll move right along. Ms. Belcastro, do we have some speakers?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we have David Mister. Mr. Mister?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the council. David Mister here. You all have heard from me, I think, a number of times at previous work sessions. Just to remind you, I am general counsel to Baltimore County Licensed Beverage Association, which is the retail, the association, trade association of retail alcoholic beverage dealers in Baltimore County. I've represented them for 40 years. Actually been doing this longer, believe it or not, than Mr. Moeller has been in the alcoholic beverage regulation business. I also have had the good fortune to represent, either currently or during my career, the majority of restaurants in Baltimore County that hold alcoholic beverages licenses. I want to say, as I have before, I want to thank Mr. Moeller because he's been a great ally and help with me, with my clients through the years, and I certainly appreciate his service. We'll miss him, although I think he's still going to be around a little longer. Also want to thank again the county executive, Mr. Benjamin, for apparently taking into account some of the criticisms I'd made of earlier drafts of this ordinance. But again, I think there's still tremendous problems. And I must say that I strongly disagree with both Chief Hyatt and Mr. Moeller, whom I respect, about some of the aspects of this. First off, regarding the authority of the liquor board. The liquor board in Baltimore County has much broader authority than this ordinance would grant to the police department and Office of Administrative Hearings. In Baltimore County, they can bring you in to show cause for any violation of the laws. There's a requirement that you obey all laws. As a practical matter, it has been the policy and practice of Baltimore County Police Department for as long as I've been practicing in this area, which I tell you is 40 plus years, that any time there is a report of a crime at or near the vicinity of an alcoholic beverage license establishment, they send the police report to the liquor board. And at least this incarnation of the liquor board, in my experience, sets almost every one of those that I've seen in for a hearing. And I would say that it's my feeling that I have probably handled the majority of show cause hearings over the last 10 years as compared to other attorneys in the area. Now, I had suggested in the last draft of proposed amendment that I sent that we exclude establishments as part of the definition of business premises, as you exclude lawfully licensed medical cannabis distilleries, distributors, that we also exclude any premises that is issued an alcoholic beverages license by the Board of Liquor License Commissioners for Baltimore County. That's my suggestion. If you all would adopt that amendment, I'd probably go away and you wouldn't hear from me anymore. But assuming that that may not happen, I still have grave concerns about what's being said here. The chief would say to us, just trust us. We're going to apply this law judiciously. However, if you look at the way the ordinance is drafted, it's way overly broad. It doesn't limit it to certain things. It's a trust government, don't worry about it, we're just going to do the right thing. Well, the problem is this applies to any of these activities, and there's specifically delineated criminal acts, but it's not just as your secretary, Mr. Boswick, says, just at the business premises. The statute specifically refers to at or near the business premises. So as Councilman Patoka indicated, we may be talking about a situation where not in the parking lot, as Mr. Mueller mentioned, but some places several blocks away where patrons have left from a business establishment. And therefore the police are called because there's a disturbance or some violent conduct. And frankly, I've had to defend these cases in front of the liquor board where they're 2 blocks from the licensed establishment. So this statute would apply to that and would say that that is potential conduct that can be sanctioned. I don't want to abuse my time, so let me sort of boil it down to where I think the biggest problem is. If alcoholic beverage licensed establishments are going to be included within the ambit of this statute, then we have a grave concern that the language of the existing statute, and I understand this is existing, and we've asked it to be amended out, but at the copy I have at page 8, it's under subsection E, line 13 through 18. The existing language says that lack of knowledge, acquiescence, or participation in or responsibility for the public nuisance on the part of any person who may be an owner, lessor or lessee, mortgagor or mortgagee, etc., is no defense. I don't think that's constitutionally sound. I don't think that can pass constitutional muster. They're saying it doesn't matter whether you know. Now the chief is saying this, well, we're going to be judicious, but the law says you don't have to have knowledge. You're responsible if it happened. I think that can't withstand challenge. And I will tell you, if the bill is passed as with that language still in there, then I'm sure that I can probably have 1 or 2 or more of my clients, both licensees and landlords, probably agree to pay me to file it if we can establish legal standing to file a declaratory judgment action in the Circuit Court for Baltimore County to challenge the constitutionality of this law. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Well, we thank you, Mr. for your extensive testimony. And any questions or comments for Mr. Thank you, Mr. Ms. Belcastro, next speaker, please.
Mr. Chair, he is the only speaker who registered to testify on this bill today.
Okay. Well, we thank you very much. And I know an awful lot of work has been done on this bill. And I look forward to more communications with everyone as we approach the final vote on Monday. And now we'll move on to page 8, Bill 24-22, Mr. Drew Vetter, Police Accountability Board.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the council. Drew Vetter here to present Bill 2422 on behalf of the administration concerning the establishment of a Police Accountability Board in Baltimore County. The establishment of the PAB was required by House Bill 670 of the 2021 Maryland General Assembly legislative session, which was the Maryland Police Accountability Act of 2021. Generally speaking, this bill repealed the Law Enforcement Officers' Bill of Rights and established provisions that relate to a statewide accountability and discipline process for police officers, including a requirement for each local jurisdiction in the state to establish a PAB, as well as creating administrative charging committees and trial boards in each jurisdiction. This bill establishes the PAB for Baltimore County. It was informed by several community input sessions that the administration conducted as the bill was introduced, as well as written comments that we have been accepting for several weeks, as well as meetings with interested stakeholders and advocacy groups. Some of the highlights of the bill include the membership. It's a 9-member board, including the chair, 7 members for each council district, as well as 2 at-large appointments. To the extent practicable, the board shall reflect the racial, gender, and cultural diversity of Baltimore County, and that is language taken straight from House Bill 670. Members are subject to a criminal background check and are appointed to 3-year terms, which will be staggered. Budget, the county executive is required to propose a budget and assign staff as necessary to the board. The FY23 budget that the council is considering now contemplates an executive secretary, an administrative position, as well as other costs for the board. Council, the bill specifies that the county attorney shall be the legal advisor of the board, which is consistent with the county charter, but provides that in the event of a conflict, the board may request that the county engage outside counsel. The duties of the board mirror the requirements in House Bill 670, which are as follows. The PAB shall hold quarterly meetings with the heads of law enforcement agencies in the jurisdiction and otherwise work with law enforcement agencies and county government to improve matters of policing. The PAB shall appoint civilian members to administrative charging committees and trial boards. The PAB shall receive complaints of misconduct filed by members of the public. And on a quarterly basis, the PAB shall review outcomes of disciplinary matters considered by the charging committees, and on or before December 31st of each year, submit a report to the governing body of the county, which would be the county executive, county council, that identifies any trends in the disciplinary process of police officers and makes recommendations on changes to policy that would improve police accountability. In conclusion, we believe that the establishment of a PAB represents a significant step forward in improving civilian oversight and transparency in policing matters in the county, especially when combined with the civilian involvement in the administrative charging committee and trial board process. Through the appointment process, we are looking forward to establishing a strong board that reflects the diversity of the county, and we are looking forward to being fully compliant with House Bill 670 upon passage of the legislation. That concludes my remarks. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vetter. Are there any questions or comments from the members?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Councilman Marks.
Thank you very much. Mr. Vetter, I know there's been a lot of discussion about the way in which this board will be appointed. And my question is not in any way directed at the current administration, but once we pass a bill, it's there forever. It's in statute. The concern I think many people have is that a future county executive would appoint all members of a certain bent. I guess my question is twofold. First, why haven't we looked at a hybrid model like we have for the planning board, the landmarks commission, other bodies where it's a certain blend of county executive and county council appointees? And secondly, why aren't we looking also at the political diversity of the county? We dealt with this during the redistricting process. I hear so much about diversity. I don't hear much about the political diversity, differences of viewpoints. And I think that's also an important thing we should be considered. Is that, do we have to follow the state language or can we add that? 2 questions.
Okay. So let me try to address those one-on-one. We are advocating that the appointments be made by the county executive. We're very focused on the diversity of the board and truly making this a board that reflects the diversity broadly defined throughout the county. And that goal is most easily accomplished when there is a single entity that's making the appointments, because you then have the ability to consider the different types of applications that are coming in from the various districts, and ensuring that you've got all of those different perspectives represented. In contrast to that, when you have appointments made, within each council district, you don't necessarily have a view into what types of candidates are being considered in each district, and may not end up having a board that reflects diversity of the county as a whole. And that's why we continue to advocate for these appointments to be made by the county executive. In terms of how diversity is sort of defined in the bill, this is something that was certainly a topic of debate at the state level in House Bill 670. What we've done is adopted the language from that bill in the local legislation. I think that is sufficient definition, but certainly something that can be added to or expanded to include different types of diversity.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Marks. Any additional questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Yes.
Councilman Cash?
Yes, I'm trying to get my picture on. There we go. Mr. Vetter, first of all, this is, I guess, part of reimagining policing, which was an effort that started maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago. And it's a result of the horrendous violations of people's rights and lives throughout the country. And, incidents that none of us approve of and believe that there needed to be consequences. However, since there's been reforms, and this being one of them, crime has increased in the cities. Murders have increased. Our county has had increases in crime. Our people who live in the county are more frightened than they used to be. And every community meeting I go to, I hear it. People are very frightened. And with this legislation, and by the way, I've had police officers tell me how they don't feel as if they're going to be backed up by the county government. They're very demoralized. I had a couple of policemen show me films of one policeman had given a driver a parking ticket, and then the police officer was a subject of, the individual got the ticket, cursed at him, yelled at the officer, screamed at the officer, pointed at the officer's face. And the officer felt as if, well, he couldn't do anything about it. All he did was walk over and put a ticket on that car. Now, what does this legislation do to help our police in their efforts to make our county safer? I mean, you realize that a couple of years ago, this county crime record was very good. Our police department had one of the highest rates of solving crimes and holding people responsible for those crimes. And, I'd like to get back to those days. I mean, I certainly don't want to get back to any days where people were not treated correctly, but I do want to get back to the days where crime was low and our policemen felt as if they were part of the county, and they felt as if, if they did the right thing, they'd be backed up. So if you please answer that.
Yeah, thank you, Councilman. Understand and appreciate your comments, and of course, the county executive and the administration recognize and appreciate the tremendous contributions that members of the Baltimore County Police Department make to our county and their efforts to keep county residents safe during a very difficult time, in a very challenging and often dangerous job. And those efforts are certainly appreciated, I know, by the administration and kind of the leadership across the county here. This bill is narrowly focused on the establishment of the Police Accountability Board, which is an outcome from the state legislation that I've referenced several times, which was really focused on the disciplinary process primarily for administrative proceedings, for administrative disciplinary proceedings. And really it covers that process. And I think efforts to reduce and to fight crime are separate. I think there are a number of key investments that were made in the police department's budget that the council is also considering now. I know we've spoken before, Councilman, about efforts to fully staff the police department and to address some of the vacancies that we're experiencing. We're very focused on those things as well. So there are a lot of initiatives underway within the budget process and under Chief Hyatt's leadership to improve public safety across the county. While we did experience a high level of homicide and non-fatal shootings in 2021, we're encouraged by the trends in 2022 that those incidents are trending downward again. So we're encouraged to see that. We did experience reductions in several major crime categories in 2021 that have continued this year. So we are making progress. We have a strong partnership with the state's attorney's office and an extremely high closure rate. And one of the most important things that we can do to prevent future violent crime is by holding people accountable and solving crimes. And our detectives at the county police department are very effective in doing that, which speaks to their professionalism and the leadership of the department. So we're focused on improving public safety while at the same time improving the discipline process and achieving the goals of the House Bill 670, which again is focused on the discipline process and in increasing civilian involvement and oversight in those proceedings.
And I hope that efforts to connect our police precincts with the communities they protect will continue and get stronger. I had made the comment before when we had the budget briefing, seeing the additional positions in the police department, in the Department of Education. And obviously we know there's 130 vacancies in the police department already, so you're adding positions. So let's hope, and the same with the school system, that the strategy will be successful to fill those positions that are so desperately needed, so that the people of this county will be protected. It's so important to figure out with teaching, with policing, why we're having problems filling these vacancies, solve those problems, and, progress from there. I'm very concerned about the way things are going. And, it's quite a task that is ahead of the administration in regard to to the policing issue. And I thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you very much, Councilman Catch. Mr. Vetter, any additional questions or comments? I'm going to just take an opportunity before we get started and say that, I've done an awful lot of talking with a lot of people around the area as well as police officers. And I think it's clear that we have a very good police department. And I think it's very clear that we made a good police department a lot better last year when we all the members here, as well as the county executive, and given credit to the union and everyone else who participated in that process, and all the advocates who came forward with testimony and stories. And we made our police department a lot better with the SMART Act last year. So this will move us a little better, a little further. And I look forward to hearing all the speakers that have come out today to share with us their point of view. We have an awful lot of speakers, so I would only ask that everyone indulge us and go straight to the point of your comment. And please feel free, if someone else have made your point, to say ditto and add your additional comments and not necessarily have to repeat the same thing over and over again. So,
Chair, if I
Yes.
may, I just want to respond to your comment. All the members did not vote for the Smart Police Reform Act. So, and I disagree with you. I actually think that helped weaken our police department, and it showed a measure of lack of support that they are feeling now. And I think that the creation of this board does exactly the same thing.
well, Councilman Crandall, not to get into a big debate, but I didn't necessarily say everybody voted for it, but clearly your point of view helped shape the discussion, as your point of view always shapes the discussion, whether it manifests itself in your vote or not. But clearly we respect your point of view. We hear you. And I'll just say that, listen, in defense of the SMART Act, I think it was wise, and I think the FOP agreed that we have no interest in hiring a police officer that was fired from someplace else because of some infraction of the rules. So we have a very good police department that have very high standards, and we want to keep it that way. And on that note, I thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
Move on. Sure. We'll move on to the speakers. Ms. Belcastro?
Our first speaker is Andrew Miller. Before I unmute Mr. Miller, as the chairman said, I will just, once you hit your 3-minute mark, I will just let you know that you're at your 3 minutes and to wrap up your comments. Mr. Miller?
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Jones and members of the council. Thanks for the opportunity to testify on this very important bill. My name is Andrew Miller. I'm a longtime resident and voter in Baltimore County. My wife and I live in the 2nd District. I'm speaking this afternoon on behalf of Jews United for Justice, which organizes more than 800 people in Baltimore County to support local social, racial, and economic justice issues. My Jewish values are commanded by the text from chapter 16 of the book of Deuteronomy that begins, "Justice, justice shall you pursue." That is why I am here to testify. We have yet to achieve justice for all in this county. I know that my family and the people in my mostly white neighborhood have little to fear from the police. And I know that many people from communities of color have experienced harassment and worse, and believe they have everything to fear. They are a growing percentage of the population of this county, and they need to be heard. As we've already heard, last year, the Maryland legislature passed a reform bill, and this bill is a response to that requirement. Baltimore County has a proposal on the table that meets only the bare minimum requirements and does not ensure true accountability. Is that what we really want, or do we want to ensure that those who are harmed will receive justice? The power is in your hands to help us approach that goal. On April 14th, an incident occurred in Dundalk where a group of police officers shot a young man who was a bystander to an arrest that they were trying to carry out. There are a lot of disturbing aspects to this story, and I've recounted them in my written testimony, which I sent this afternoon, but I don't have time to read that here. I will keep to the time limit. I will simply say that it seems likely to me that the county will be paying out a multi-million-dollar judgment in yet another lawsuit. This story is emblematic of why many residents of Baltimore County do not trust the current system to ensure that justice will be done. It demonstrates yet again why we need a police accountability board with real authority. The Baltimore County Coalition for Police Reform is asking for the following 4 measures to be included in the bill creating this board. First, membership must reflect the groups who have the most encounters with law enforcement. Retired law enforcement and family members are already well represented elsewhere in the process and should not be able to serve on this board. Second, the board needs independent investigatory authority. We have seen what happens time and time again when that authority is not independent. Police cannot police themselves. Third, assure that the budget is sufficient to include stipends for board members and staff. And fourth, the board should not be represented by the county attorney. This is a conflict of interest. There needs to be funding for independent counsel. Preventing more multi-million-dollar lawsuits will pay for itself. Thank you for your time. I urge you to pass a bill that ensures real accountability by including all of these measures.
Thank you very much, Mr. Miller. Next speaker, Ms. Belcastro.
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Our next speaker is Peter Richkus. One moment. Ms. Richkus?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, council members. For the record, my name is Peter Richkus, and I live in what is currently District 5. With Bill 2422, the council has an opportunity to make Baltimore County a leader in police accountability for the benefit of both residents and law enforcement. As originally submitted, and as Mr. Vettner pointed out, 2422 meets the basic requirements of last year's Maryland Police Accountability Act. But with the governor's approval last week of Senator Sidnor's Public Safety and Criminal Justice, Transparency and Accountability Act, the details of Bill 2422 and any amendments will have to be reviewed for consistency with the new law. One requirement is to stand up the required administrative charging committee before July 1st. Members of the Baltimore County Coalition for Police Accountability have recommended to you and the administration specific amendments to 2422 to strengthen our citizen-led PAB and advance accountability, transparency, and trust in Baltimore County law enforcement to make all of us safer. Mr. Miller enumerated several of those. I'm confident that the majority of county law enforcement officers and staff are good and faithful public servants. But we also know that law enforcement agencies, like any organization, cannot be completely objective when trying to monitor themselves. That's why the PAB is needed and why the state law requires it. Unfortunately, as documented in Governor Hogan's most recent Deaths Involving a Law Enforcement Officer report, Baltimore County has one of the worst records for police killing of civilians in the state. The costs are not only the lives lost and impacted, but millions of dollars in settlements to bereaved family members. And in the vast majority of cases, the involved police officers were not held responsible, even though the courts found fault. By appointing civilians from the community, civil rights, and faith-based organizations, and members of communities with a higher frequency of interaction with the police, and by creating a strong and independent PAB, it it will be possible for this new board to work productively with county government and law enforcement to improve policing and police accountability in Baltimore County. I urge you to amend Bill 2422 accordingly. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Rickus. Next speaker, Ms. Val Castro.
Certainly. Our next speaker is Nisha McCoy. Ms. McCoy,
Yes.
you may begin your testimony.
All right. Thank you. All right. My name is Naisha McCoy, and I'm here to testify in favor of Bill 2422, the Police Accountability Board. Baltimore County needs a strong police accountability board that will address police brutality in Baltimore County. Police have unjustly killed multiple residents in Baltimore County, including 2 Black residents in 2016 and 2019. That have resulted in $1 million settlements, but no prosecution of the police officers responsible. Baltimore County needs a police accountability board that is diverse and reflects the community. Members need to include individuals from marginalized and underrepresented communities in Baltimore County and not have members that represent the police department. Police need to have, the PAB needs to have sufficient funding. The PAB cannot be undercut because it does not have the funding to do its job. The PAB must have investigatory powers so that they can investigate complaints, incidents, as we know that the police cannot police themselves. The PAB must have an independent counsel. There must not be any conflict of interest with having the county attorney general representing the PAB, and there must be adequate funding for an independent counsel. Last, if Baltimore County is committed to accountability and transparency, it is critical that the annual PAB report be made public. Let's make Baltimore County a leader in police accountability.
Thank you, Ms. McCoy. Next speaker, please.
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Our next speaker is Nora Miller Smith. Are you there?
Yes, I am.
You may begin.
Okay, my name is Nora Miller Smith. I live in Council District 3 and have lived in Baltimore County for 40 years. To ensure transparency and citizen trust in the Police Accountability Board, it is important that its makeup be diverse and representative of our county. Per the bill's wording, that it should reflect the racial, gender, and cultural diversity of the county. I also feel it's crucial that the board has representation from communities which experience a higher frequency of interactions with law enforcement and are most impacted by police misconduct. How to do this? Other Maryland counties have addressed this. Frederick County, with a 10% Black population, passed an amendment to their bill saying that at least one member of their 9-member police accountability board must be Black, and another must be a first or second generation immigrant. If Baltimore County, with a 30% Black population, considers what Frederick County has done, our 9-member board would have at least 3 members who are Black. Anne Arundel County's website explaining their selection process for their PAB states that they are prioritizing PAB members with diverse skills and backgrounds, including being active in community and civil rights organizations, being clergy or having other faith leadership experience, having training in social work, sociology, or education, and having experience in behavioral health. I feel that including Police Accountability Board members with behavioral health experience and expertise is particularly important. One of the bills that State Senator Augustine sponsored this legislative session was Senate Bill 12, Behavioral Health Crisis Response Services. Per Senator Augustine's testimony to the Senate, 10 to 20% of police encounters involve someone showing signs of mental illness or a substance abuse disorder. And 1 in 4 individuals with a mental illness have been arrested at some point in their lives. Those with mental illnesses are 16 times more likely to be killed during police contact. Some fatal force incidents between Baltimore County Police and individuals experiencing a mental health crisis have led to multi-million-dollar settlements to victims' families. With their independent investigative powers absolutely crucial for an effective police accountability board, members of the board with expertise in the fields of behavioral health and substance use disorder will not only be able to examine the particulars of each case, but will be able to make the kind of critically important recommendations to the county, which can hopefully prevent these kinds of incidents from happening in the future. I urge the council to ensure that the board is comprised of people who reflect the diversity and expertise of our county's population, and to ensure its independence to not include former law enforcement officers. The board must have independent investigatory powers as well as independent legal counsel. This will help make our police accountability board as strong and effective as possible in maintaining citizen trust in our police. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Miller-Smith. Next speaker, Ms. Castwell.
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Next speaker is Claire Landers. Ms. Landers?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, you can.
Yes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, council members. I'm Claire Landers. I'm a county resident living in District 2. The truly terrible events in Dundalk that left an innocent bystander in critical condition, having been shot 6 times by county police, adds urgency to establish a PAB that is empowered and well-resourced to effectively investigate and hold officers accountable to the people of Baltimore County. So I urge the council to amend the bill to strengthen the PAB in key areas. Provide the PAB with the required powers and adequate resources to conduct thorough and independent investigations into complaints without fear or favor. Public confidence has been deeply undermined by a system that relies on police to police themselves, alongside a prosecutor's office that works closely every day with the same officers. A strong PAB should also be required to regularly publish detailed findings in publicly accessible reports. Legal guidance and advice to PAB members should come from an outside independent attorney. The county attorney's mandate is to advocate for and protect the county's interests. Police officers are county employees. The PAB's work revolves establishing potential findings of officer misconduct that may have an adverse impact on the county, particularly when a finding could result in a monetary settlement against the county. That is a de facto conflict of interest. Contracting and funding outside legal counsel for the PAB seems like best practice and a simple measure of good faith toward concerned residents. Regarding composition of the PAB members will be responsible for rendering a significant service to the county overall and should be compensated to reflect the time and work expected over 3 years, along with requisite professional staffing. Former law enforcement officers should be precluded from joining the PAB. If the council does take a different course on this, then I urge you to prohibit membership to any former officer whose past record includes a sustained complaint or a pattern of multiple complaints, both sustained and or unsustained. Please note that in Minneapolis, weak civilian oversight boards had fielded 12 complaints of alleged misconduct about former officer Derek Chauvin, and he continued serving in good standing until a teenage bystander's iPhone recorded him killing George Floyd slowly. The PAB should reflect membership from groups most directly impacted by overly aggressive police tactics. The county's own public safety data dashboard indicates quite clearly that within our majority Black communities, including our county schools, children and teens are especially vulnerable to overreaction by police that can change the course of their young lives. It is the elders from their communities that need robust representation on the PAB.
You can wrap up
While
your comments.
everyone wants to feel safe in their neighborhood, no one wants to subject their local young people to undue harassment or undue fatal encounters due to overt or covert bias. By amending this bill, you as our elected representatives will utilize a great opportunity to restore public confidence. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Landers. Next speaker, Ms. Belcastro.
Our next speaker, Mr. Chair, is Lorena Diaz. Ms. Diaz?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, you can.
Hi, my name is Lorena Diaz. I am with the ACLU of Maryland. I would like to provide testimony in support of Bill 2422, if amended with the recommendations from the Baltimore County Coalition for Police Accountability. To not be repetitive, I would like to say ditto to the points raised by individuals who testified before me, including members from JUFJ, PETA, Naisha, and Nora. Additionally, I would like to address the remarks from council members Marks, Crandall, and Cash. I believe that's how it's pronounced. I would like to remind you that the passage of the MPAA, also known as the Maryland Police Accountability Act, sent a clear message that state policymakers understand the need for community involvement in the investigation process and the need to establish trust between communities and law enforcement so that our communities can feel safe and be best served and protected without the threat of over-policing and discrimination. Our council has the power to create a strong police accountability board that includes sufficient resources for stipends, independent counsel, and their own investigative authority, just to name a few. Our communities deserve more than a bare bones PAB bill, and I would like to remind you all that you are accountable to your constituents, not the FOP. We need membership that reflects our community. The PAB's membership must reflect the population's identities, communities, and geographic areas that have the most law enforcement encounters, and not simply the county population at large. Additionally, retired law enforcement and their immediate family members should be prohibited from serving on the PAB. The PAB needs investigatory powers so they can investigate complaints or incidents themselves. Otherwise, the fact gathering is entirely conducted by other police. Essentially, the police will continue to investigate themselves. And we know that this does not work, and this is not what we are here to create. The council has the opportunity to do right by their constituents and set themselves apart from the rest of the state. I urge you to listen to all the testimonies that are being provided today in order for us to strengthen a PAB and not to create something that is watered down, as Councilmember Crandall has suggested. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. V. Diaz. We certainly appreciate your comments and utilizing the ditto. Next speaker, Ms. Belcastro.
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Our next speaker is Bridget Dumais. Are you there?
Yeah, hello, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, you can.
Hi, my name is Bridge Dumais. I am a resident in Councilman Catch's district. I'm also the political organizer with 1199 SEIU, United Healthcare Workers East. We are the largest healthcare workers union in the nation, with 2,000 healthcare members who live and work in Baltimore County alone. Our union advocated for the Maryland Police Accountability Act of 2021 and remains in support of legislation that will increase civilian powers on police accountability boards. Our union is in favor of CB 2422 under the condition that the bill is amended to align with the recommendations of the Baltimore County Coalition for Police Accountability. I know these recommendations have been submitted to you in writing, and I just want to echo, Lorena and Claire and Nora and Naisha, thank you so much for your comments. I fully agree with all of them. And again, just want to go ahead and highlight that the PAB needs to be made up of members from community members from communities that are disproportionately targeted by police. Civilians on the PAB must have no prior affiliation with police departments, including family members. it's critically important that the PAB has independent investigatory powers. Having the Baltimore County Attorney be doing those investigations creates a serious conflict of interest. And of course, the PAB must be properly funded so that way it can achieve its goals. In order to achieve true public safety and hold police accountable if they commit misconduct, the civilians on the PAB must have full voting powers, and the PAB must have the teeth that it needs to hold officers accountable. We want to make sure that this is a real PAB and not something that is just bare bones. So I encourage you all to please first strengthen this bill with the amendments from the Baltimore County Coalition for Police Accountability, and then pass the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bridge Dumais. Our next speaker, Ms. Belcastro.
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Our next speaker is Dave Folderauer. Are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. Good evening, council. And first, I want to extend my condolences to Councilman Marks. I understand he lost his father over the weekend. I represent, as you know, now the 3,200, over 3,200 retired and active police officers from Baltimore County. And I'm listening to some of this testimony that's going on. And quite frankly, I'm not sure where these people are living. The Baltimore County Police Department is the standard. The Baltimore County Police Department is the most professional police department in the United States. And yeah, we're hurting right now. Even the chief of police has had to admit that we have had the highest of standards for decades. We understand the need for this legislation based on what the Maryland General Assembly did last year. But let's face facts. This was not about the Baltimore County Police Department. And now we're saddled with this. We know what police department that this was, House Bill 670 was targeting, and it is certainly not ours. So some of the things that I'm going to ask of council, and there's a lot of talk about diversity, and I'm disappointed to think of one individual nominating or putting all 9 on this board, especially when we have a diverse council, and nobody knows your people better than you do, the people in your district, and council should have a say in this. If you can't name one directly, at least you should have the opportunity to bring a name forward to the executive. And I ask that there's a confirmation practice. One of the things I've heard from the other testimony is diversity. Okay, so if we want this board to reflect minorities, I say do it, but then let's also do it with gender. Let's do it with age, and let's do it with political party. I'd also like to know if these members or these people that they're testifying, have they reached out to their precincts and become part of their police community relations council? There's the place to start if they're looking for change. The other thing that we're asking as we move forward, we understand there has to be a criminal background investigation, and what we'd like to see is a more robust investigation. This is a very important board that's being established, and anyone that's guilty of a crime of violence should not be on this board. Domestic violence, felonies, or any crimes of moral turpitude. And we're asking you to amend the bill to exclude people that would have that in their back. And the other thing the bill does not mention is training. If you're going to bring in members of the public, then we're asking that they be trained, that they go through the Citizens Academy offered by the Baltimore County Police Department, that they have ethics training once a year, that they have bias training once a year, and that they have to ride along so that they understand the vigors of police work. And lastly, although complaints are no longer to be notarized, we ask for a declaration statement that people bringing forth complaints under the penalty of perjury will tell the truth. We're all about fairness. We're all about independence with this. We are fine moving forward with this, but this should be fair and not discriminatory. And I guess since they haven't shut me down yet, the folks have the facts wrong on this shooting that occurred in Dundalk. It was not a bystander. It was a person using a vehicle to assault police. So I thank you for your time.
Mr. Foldenauer or Mr. Chairman?
Yes, go ahead, Councilman Marks.
Mr. Foldenauer, how does it make you feel when the ACLU of Maryland, a group that I always thought supported expanding opportunities and input by many, says that a whole group of people, retired police officers, should be ineligible from serving on this board?
It's discriminatory. It's the very thing that we're hearing testimony on today, that we shouldn't discriminate by adding people to this board. And now you're taking a whole section of society, or a part of section of society with a lot of expertise. That would be the first place that you're looking. And again, we're not looking for anybody to be on this board that leans one way or the other. They should be independent, want the truth, and want to make Baltimore County stronger.
Councilman Marks, your last comment was muted.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, thank you, Mr. Foldenauer. We certainly appreciate you calling in and your point of view. Next, we will move on to our next speaker, Ms. Belcastro.
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Erica McDonald. Ms. McDonald?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Good evening, Speaker Jones and council members. I'm Erica McDonald, a resident of District 1 and co-president of the League of Women Voters of Baltimore County, representing over 200 members in the county. The League advocates against systemic racism and for the prevention of excessive force and brutality by law enforcement. We believe that all people of color deserve equal protection under the law. Baltimore County has a problem with racially biased policing and brutality. Police have killed multiple Black residents, including 2 that resulted in multi-million-dollar settlements, but no prosecution of the police officers responsible. There have been over 1,000 reported use of force incidents between 2017 and 2021, including 190 last year. This police misconduct disproportionately impacts people of color. In 2021, 67% of use of force complaints were by people of color, who make up only 40% of the population. Also, traffic stop data from 2021 indicates that 68% of stops in Baltimore County were people of color. Of the 86 complaints of misconduct last year, the community has no information about why over half of them were not sustained. For example, last October, a resident was shot and killed in Woodlawn, and earlier this month, a teenager was shot by police in Dundalk. Without civilian oversight, there is no way for the community to know if investigations into these incidents are comprehensive and unbiased. The intent of the Maryland Police Accountability Act of 2021 is to address these problems with civilian oversight, including a police accountability board that oversees and reports on the police misconduct process, and importantly, appoints civilians to the administrative charging committee and trial boards. For the community to have trust in the Police Accountability Board and the misconduct investigation process, Bill 2422 should be amended as suggested by the Baltimore County Coalition for Police Accountability in the following ways. To avoid conflict of interest in 2 ways. 1, excluding retired law enforcement officers from serving on the board, because that is indeed a conflict of interest. It's not discrimination. And 2, having independent counsel, not the county attorney who represents the Baltimore County Police Department. Another amendment should be specifying funding and staffing, including full-time dedicated executive director, and to pay each board member a stipend of $10,000 a year. To empower the Police Accountability Board to independently investigate misconduct, not just to rely on the police department's investigations, again, a conflict of interest, and to monitor and improve the administrative charging committees and trial boards' decisions. They need independent investigation capabilities. And then finally, to include a fully funded and staffed administrative charging committee, which must be up and running no later than July 1st of 2022. I thank you for your time, and I urge you to pass a bill that ensures real accountability and transparency by including all of these measures. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McDonald.
Mr.
Next
Chair?
speaker, Mr. Marquette.
Can I
Yes,
ask Ms. McDonald a question?
sure. Go right ahead.
Ms. McDonald, could you elaborate a little bit on the stipend? Just, I've heard that a couple of times and you were very specific with the amount. Can you tell me the rationale for the stipend and the amount that you articulated? Just the reasoning behind it? I'd like to understand that a little better.
Sure, I'm happy to. The idea of the stipend is one that comes from NACOL's research and reports on civilian oversight boards and best practices. So there's a ton of data out there. And it is a number that I believe was approved by, I think it was Howard County's Police Accountability Board. So it is in line with the amount of stipends that are given to other boards in Maryland. That was why we included it in that specific number in the information that we sent to the council about the amendments that we'd like to see.
Okay, thank you. I know we have boards and commissions that some do receive stipends and some do not.
Right.
And just wanted to understand the rationale
Well,
a little better. Thank you.
I think just to follow up, the rationale for providing a stipend is that this is serious work that has to be done by the board, and that if they are compensated for the work, that we are able to attract people who take this work seriously.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you again, Ms. McDonald and Councilman Batoka.
Sure.
I sit back and think about our pay. But that's a different story. Next speaker, Ms. Valcastro.
Our next speaker is Lisa Barkin. Are you there?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
My name is Lisa Barkan, and I'm a member of District 3. I agree with all the people who have spoken about needing the amendments that were provided by the Baltimore County Coalition for Police Accountability. And I wanted for a moment to speak to Mr. Patoka's question. Our county is diverse in race, sex, sexual orientation, and also socioeconomically it's diverse. The stipend, I believe, is really necessary for those folks who do not have the ability to be a member of such a board unless they could have money that would allow them to travel to meetings and for childcare. So I believe that the stipend is extremely important and it should be in the budget. Mr. Waldhauser and Mr. Vetter both spoke about making a strong, diverse police accountability board. And I believe Mr. Waldhauser said it's all about independence. So the purpose of this board is to ensure that the police complaints about the police are handled well and that there is a civilian oversight. For that reason, I believe that there should not be current or former law enforcement personnel on the board. And additionally, it also provides for the independence that Mr. Waldhauser says he's in favor of. Likewise, the county attorney should not be the lawyer for the board because the county attorney cannot wear two hats at one time. The county attorney would be responsible for negotiating any kind of settlement and responding to any kind of lawsuit that is brought by someone who has alleged they suffered from police misconduct. Whether actively or not, it would be impossible for the county attorney to be able to be objective the way that an independent counsel could. And likewise, for that very reason, the board should have strong subpoena and investigatory power. Again, no one is necessarily claiming that the police intentionally would would take an investigation and try to get rid of it. But indeed, there needs to be an independent investigation. By having these things, it will increase the ability of people, especially in communities that suffer more from police issues, to believe in the police force and to believe that it is independent, which in turn could help lower crime because people would be hopefully more inclined to report.
If you can wrap up your comments, please.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Next speaker, Ms. Belcastro.
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Our next speaker, a registered speaker, was Joanne Antoine. I have tried unsuccessfully to locate Ms. Antoine on our list, even under the phone number that was given in the registration. The next speaker registered after that was Clark Miller, who I have not been able to find on our attendee list as well, including the phone number that was given for the registration. So our next speaker will be Daniel Gullenbeck. Mr. Gullenbeck?
Yes, thank you. I'm Daniel Golombek. I live in District 3. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in favor of the creation of a Police Accountability Board in Baltimore County. I also appreciate the administration's efforts to listen to the community and modify the initial draft of the bill based on community input. Most of us believe that the people sworn to serve and protect us should respect our rights, treat us all as equals, and ensure we can make it home safe to our loved ones. Law enforcement and their lobbies have leveraged their power to silence our voices, shield themselves from responsibility for wrongdoing, and deny us what we need to thrive. Baltimore County has now an opportunity to be a leader in government transparency and accountability. The membership of its Police Accountability Board should truly reflect this population. The board has to have investigative powers needed because the Administrative Charging Committee acts after the investigation is completed. And also it is imperative for the board to have independent legal counsel and the resources in staff and budget to successfully operate. We ask that you enact a bill that includes all these provisions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, Ms. Belcastro.
Certainly. Our next speaker is Ann Beasley. Ms. Beasley?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Well, thank you. Good evening, Chairman and council members. I'm a retired nurse practitioner. I live in District 5. And although I have not had much personal interaction with the justice system, and all my interactions with the police have been very positive, I am very concerned that the plan for the Police Accountability Board put forward by the county executive is not likely, as it presently stands, to be either fair or effective. It's been very painful to me to see the statistics and read reports about the inequities shown toward people of color by police officers nationally and even within our own county. This has been a serious problem, and the solutions must be serious as well. I'm testifying today because I feel strongly that we should not lose the opportunity to create a fair and effective police accountability board. In evaluating the county's proposed plan, I'm concerned that there's no mention of an independent investigation service to be used by the board. If there's any question that a police officer acted inappropriately, an investigation should be conducted by somebody outside the police force. The investigation should be done by an impartial professional who is able to seek all the facts from all the concerned parties. This is an essential to avoid an obvious conflict of interest. Also, the attorneys assigned to the PAB should not be employed by the County of Baltimore. An independent attorney should be part of the structure of the PABs, not contacted on an as-needed basis. This is essential to avoid another blatant conflict of interest. It would be a real shame to spend the time and the money to create a PAB that lacks the credibility because of these conflicts of interest. We need to create a PAB that is not rigged. Creation of a fair and effective PAB is a great opportunity to improve the relationship between the police department and the citizens that they protect. And this opportunity should not be wasted. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, Ms. Belcastro.
Certainly, Mr. Chair, our next speaker is Phil Miller. Mr. Miller?
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and all members of the council. My name is Phil Miller. I am a resident of Pikesville in County District 2, represented by Councilman Patoka. I also am an active member of JUFJ, Jews United for Justice. Jewish communities in Baltimore County and all over the world have just marked the 8-day holiday of Passover, celebrating and retelling the story of the biblical exodus from Egypt. Passover's most important and sacred ritual is the Seder, where families and friends gather to delve into the Exodus stories and its contemporary applications. At my family Seder, I spoke with my children and grandchildren about what this ancient story teaches us today. Having left Egypt, the story obligates us to establish and support a society whose hallmark is freedom and justice, governed by a fully transparent representative democracy. It is in the spirit of Passover that I speak to you today about Bill 2422. The Maryland Police Accountability Act offers our county a sacred opportunity to enhance these Exodus commitments. However, 2422 requires change in order for us to do so. The bill was drafted before any community forum took place. Thus, the bill does not reflect the needs of the whole community, especially those parts of our community most impacted by over-policing. Additionally, in the Passover spirit of representative democracy, the membership of the Police Accountability Board must reflect the full diversity of people living in our county. In service to the goal of transparency, the PAB cannot have members who have any conflict of interest. It must also have independent investigatory powers and its own independent counsel. Council members, I thank you for your time today and urge you to reimagine and amend this bill into legislation which meet the standard of the Exodus obligations with which I began. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Phil Miller. Next speaker, Ms. Belcastro.
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Once again, we had a registered speaker, Roland Patterson, who I have not been able to locate on our attendee list, either by name or phone number that was registered. So our next speaker will be Jordan Harberger. Mr. Harberger?
Jody.
This is Jordan Harberger. Yes, I'm a resident of Baltimore County in District 4, represented by Chairman Jones. And I'm also an active member in the Jews United for Justice. I was struck as I was listening, and I was struck by the remarks of Mr. Foldauer. He questioned whether those of us who are asking for these amendments that you've heard about, whether we live in the same county as him. And so I'm troubled because this is the very thing that concerns me about representatives of the police department who think that we don't belong here. Because if we want the police to be held accountable when there are those among them who are accused of breaking the law, they would like us to be seen as people who don't belong here, who don't live here. That's what I heard, and that troubles me. And that's the very reason why I hope that the council will very seriously consider the amendments presented by the Baltimore County Coalition for Police Accountability. Because of those of us who do live here, who do pay our taxes, who do elect you to office, we want you to make sure that we are seen as people who do live here, whose opinions, whose views count, not to be dismissed as outsiders, as those whose voices should be ignored. I know, and I'm very appreciative that there is a um, uh, Fellowship of Police Officers. I'm glad that they have a union. I'm glad they have good representation. I'm glad that they have the ability to advocate for themselves. I'm saying that there are times when it is necessary for independent review. It's not every instance, but there certainly are times when there are complaints that require independent review. I know that when I put my life in the hands of someone else, as I do every time I drive on the roads and trust that the police will keep me safe, when I walk into my house, similarly when I get on an airplane, if you could each of you imagine that something tragic happened to a loved one of yours, and you wanted to make sure that whatever the cause was thoroughly investigated by people whose judgment could be independent, you wouldn't ask the Pilots Association to be the dominant representatives on determining whether there was pilot error. You wouldn't want to see anyone who was of a particular profession being in control of deciding whether their peers were making an error. And so that's why I support the amendments that are suggested, all of them, by the County Coalition, the Baltimore County Coalition for Police Accountability. And I ask you to please make sure that this commission is properly funded and it has the resources, and that the state's attorney is not, the county's attorney is not the one who is the sole counsel available to this review board. Thank you very much for hearing my comments, and I wish you a good vote and one that represents all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harburger, for your comments. Next speaker, Ms. Belcastro.
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Our next speaker is Rose Kinder. Ms. Kinder.
Yes, thank you for letting me speak tonight. My name is Rose Kinder. I'm a resident of Towson in District 6. I want to do a ditto for those who have spoken up for the amendments from the Baltimore County Coalition for Police Accountability. However, I do want to address a couple of comments from council members. Council member Marks brought up something that I think really needs to be considered, and that is the idea of possibly having a hybrid appointment model, which I think needs to be considered seriously because of the, as has been mentioned by others, folks, the county council members knowing their districts best and being able to, look into their districts and pull out those community activists who may be closest to the happenings in their district. So consideration for that as another amendment, possibly for the Police Accountability Board. And then also a comment for Councilman Catch. I heard your comment about an anecdotal comment from a police officer who was receiving abuse from, whether it was a resident or somebody just getting a traffic ticket or whatever. And, I know our officers are under great stress at many times, and I hope that you are advocating for greater mental health resources for our police officers, as part of their benefit package. I will say that as a resident of the county with a mentally ill son who had been living in my home, I have had to call the police many times to my home. And I've had the mental health crisis team to my home many times. 95% of the time, the police were professional, courteous, helpful, wonderful. However, each time I had to call, I was terrified as a parent, knowing that any false move by myself or my son could result in some sort of, danger, whether it was a taser or a gun, because these officers are armed and, could potentially injure me or kill me or my son. And so I support a police accountability board, not because I want to get the police or, find them, doing things wrong.
Ms. Kinder, if you can wrap up your comments
Yeah.
at over 3 minutes.
I will. Thank you. Ditto. Let's get a great police accountability board in Baltimore County. We have a great police force. Let's make it even better. Thank you.
Thank you for your thoughtful comments, Ms. Kinder, and your 95% approval rating. That's a good thing. Next speaker, Ms. Belcastro.
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Next speaker is Adrian Miranda.
Yes. Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. My name is Adrian Miranda. Good evening, and thank you to all of you for taking the time and for your attention on this very important bill. I am a Baltimore County resident for 48 years, and I am in the Councilman Julian Jones district. And I ditto, of course, pretty much everyone that has spoken. I do come to you with a very personal situation because I have experienced a wide range of police misconduct involving the brutal murder of my son. My son was brutally killed at the age of 19, and it was in Baltimore County. And my son's death is confirmed, a homicide by an assault by the medical examiners. However, the police that investigated my son's murder have basically, they intentionally have committed perjury, obstruction of justice, falsifying the evidence and the facts that have been confirmed, the science, the physics, the facts, the reconstruction by the expert medical examiners, and they're opposing them. And they're also telling me, my family, and I, that a homicide by an assault is not a crime. This is outrageous. And, I respect each and every one of you. We certainly are your constituents. We do vote you into power. The police, I'm sure law enforcement understands that the people, this is about the people. This board represents the people. Our voices need to be heard. We all have a different stake in this situation and in this process of what needs to take place on this board, but it is crucial. It is critical. And what I'm saying is internal affairs, again, conflict of interest. They've had me, I went in and talked to them. They asked me to come in for 2 hours. They audio taped me, they videotaped me. I've heard nothing from them, and it's almost a year. So none of that can apply to this. We do need to have independent investigations. We need to have a coalition of certainly a diverse group of people to represent us. And, again, I respect each and every one of you, but I do, when you talk about accountability, I don't believe accountability is political. I do think everything has to be across the board, of course, and represent all of us in a diverse way. But accountability is purposeful for the people. This is for the people, the citizens. And again, I pray and I hope that none of you have buried a child, and certainly in the horrible manner that I have when my son was brutally murdered at the age of 19. I still am fighting for justice for him. The police intentionally lied and covered up the murder of my son. And this must be addressed. We must find out why these kinds of things are happening, why this is allowed. I went to even try to, when I spoke to one of the lieutenant colonels and said, why are you not questioning the perpetrator? We know who killed him. We know who killed Joseph and Hale. And I said, he's no longer lawyered up. He just said, we're not. And I said, why? He said, we're just not, and hung up on me. What kind of treatment is this? This is malice. Again, this is prejudice. This is bias. I don't know if there's some kind of issue with women. I don't know if there's an issue with, well, I do know behind really what all of this is about, and it goes much deeper and much further. I am an advocate, I'm an author, I'm a grieving mother, and I strongly urge that you please pass this policy and this accountability board. It is, and also consequences. There need to be consequences.
Ms. Miranda, if you can wrap up your comments, please.
Okay, I will. I thank you all for your time and your attention, and please, your serious consideration to pass this bill. It is urgent. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Miranda, and please accept our sincere condolences for the loss of your son, and realize it's very difficult for you to testify under those conditions, or no one wants to bury a child. And next speaker, Ms. Belcastro.
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Our next speaker is Elizabeth Brown. Ms. Brown?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Chair Jones and council members. My name is Elizabeth Brown, and I live in the current and future District 6. And I'm really excited about the prospect of a police accountability board. The police are an important part of our community, and we need a strong police force that is well respected and trusted by the community it serves. And I think trust and trustworthiness are integral to the success of the police. So tonight, I just wanted to show my support for this new board and for the important work that the county is doing in forming it. I do urge the council to aim high and not just do the bare minimum. I think we need more in the bill as it is written now. And I think Baltimore County deserves no less. We want a board that is the envy of the rest of the state, you know, a standard that all other counties will compare themselves to. This means that we need a board that will reflect the residents of this county, as others have mentioned, you know, racially and ethnically, geographically, in terms of gender, age, skill set, and so on. I think that goes without saying, but I'm saying it anyway, just in case. Ideally, there would be community forums held to get community input on this, but at the very least, to build this trust and trustworthiness, we need to make sure that those communities that have the highest number of police encounters and interaction are represented on this board, and I would like to see that specified a bit more. It's also extremely important that this be a truly civilian oversight board that is well resourced. That does mean no former law enforcement officers should be able to serve. And I think others have explained why this independence is so important. It's certainly nothing against the, you know, law enforcement officers themselves. It's a matter of independence and civilian oversight. It also means that the board must have its own independent counsel, and I think others have said that, and staff, and have an appropriate budget. So I'm just asking, please, to help our police succeed, basically by building the trust that police need in order to succeed. So I ask that you make this police accountability board a truly exemplary one. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Brown. Next speaker, Ms. Belcastro.
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Next registered speaker was Kelly Cover, whom I've not been able to locate on our list with the phone number or name that was registered. So our next speaker will be Matthew Hood. Well, Matthew Hood was on, and he may have gotten off. He could not stay on. So I will go to the next speaker, who is Michelle Kim. Ms. Kim?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. Good evening, everybody. I'm a juvenile defender in a juvenile public defender in Baltimore County, and I can say with confidence that there are no meaningful oversight mechanisms in this county to address the crisis level number of police killings and the several incidents of brutality and misconduct that occur in this county. And the damage this neglect has wrought is incalculable. According to policescorecard.org, Baltimore County Police killed more unarmed people than 79% of departments nationwide. And in 2015 and 2019, this county held the Maryland record for the most police killings of civilians. And over again, the pattern is clear. The police kill a civilian. The state's attorney's office talks about how everyone's life matters and then clears the police of any wrongdoing. And the county pays out millions of dollars to the grieving family of our residents' money. And I'm again pretty confident that the shooting earlier this month of the Dundalk teenager is going to follow that same pattern. So this status quo is not tenable. An accountability board that plays a consultancy role or can make suggestions like a cute knitting circle will not work. But it's because the police do not successfully police themselves, and the state's attorney's office have shown time and time again that they are eager partners in whitewashing, and I use that term intentionally, misconduct and brutality instances. I'm going to cite two more instances, and they're not as serious as police murder, but they do indicate where we stand today. Rena Mellerson was a 76-year-old Black grandmother who was body slammed by the police in an incident that was cleared both by the state's attorney's office and by the police, and Rena Mellerson herself was charged with obstruction. That incident, as well as an incident with the Patterson High School principal, in which a Baltimore County police officer harasses him, asks this Black principal if he can read, made it to the Daily Mail in the UK, which is a conservative UK paper, because these incidents are those of international disgrace. So what needs to happen here is that the accountability board that we are creating has to have real teeth and real independence. Otherwise, it is just going to be a soft suggestion that is going to be ignored. And I firmly support all of the other constituents and residents have urged this council to adopt these amendments that are going to create a really robust board that's going to make sure that the Baltimore County Police are modeled across this country and not one that has a record of the 79% over of police killings in this nation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kim.
Mr. Chair.
We certainly appreciate your service and your perspective. And now we have Councilman Catch.
Yes, just a quick question. Will you be able to send us the statistics that you've just recited?
Absolutely.
Good. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you once again, Ms. Kim. Thank you, Councilman Catch. Next speaker, Ms. Belcastro.
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Our next speaker is Corey Johnson. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good afternoon, Chairman Jones and members of the County Council. My name is Corey Johnson, and I'm an attorney and a senior policy analyst living in District 4 of Baltimore County, as well as a candidate for state delegate in District 10. While I'm excited that there is a potential for police accountability, I'm here to encourage the council to go further than Bill 2422 and to amend. I'll ditto most of the advocates, specifically from 1199 and the ACLU and the Baltimore County Police Accountability Coalition, in regards to 1, giving the board subpoena power to allow review of an officer's actions, 2, creating independent counsel, and then 3, ensuring that former officers that have been convicted of misconduct are not allowed to serve on the board. As for my testimony, I'll highlight 2 additional amendments. 1, eliminating the barring of justice impacted individuals from eligibility of serving on the board, especially as nearly 1 in 3 adults in Maryland has a criminal record. And 2, granting the board the ability to incorporate community-centered practices in the policing paradigm. As a former DOJ attorney advisor, it is a fair assessment to say that the policing in Baltimore County has become synonymous with policing African Americans. In 2016, the DOJ issued a report illuminating the systemic racism that is present in Baltimore's police department. This culture of police brutality does not stop at the I-83 or 695 Beltway and has yielded terror to racial minorities and Black residents of Baltimore County. In 2020, the U.S. Department of Justice sued the Baltimore County government, alleging that testing practices were unfairly raised against African American applicants, resulting in fewer Black police officers being admitted into our county. The data also demonstrates that in Baltimore County, police officers are 73% more likely to stop African American drivers than white drivers. Of the county's 10 police precincts, African Americans were the most likely drivers to be stopped by the police. In Baltimore County, Black people represent 30% of the county's population, but represented nearly 58% of vehicle stops in 2020. A gentleman earlier in testimony said that Baltimore County's police force is the nation's standard. But if that is the case, then the bar on ethical policing is extremely, extremely low. And that's not an empirical, that's not just an opinion, that's an empirical fact. Last year, the Baltimore Sun ranked Baltimore County Police Department as having the 2nd highest county in the state of Maryland of fatal police killings of civilians. Bill 2422 must also account for a violent history of unethical policing paradigms that is baked into the social fabric of our county. This goes beyond just mere retroactive evaluation of police actions, but should be incorporated into developing policy and procedures for police officers. It is important that the county executive and the county council bestow residents with the power to review police misconduct, but to also take place in incorporating the community's policy views and policing paradigms to prevent misconduct and atrocities from happening in the first place. This is the only way,
wrap up your comments.
wrapping up as we speak, this is the only way to preemptively change racial discrimination and implicit bias in the BCPD. Thank you, Mr. Chair and the council.
Thank you very much, Ms. Johnson, for your comments, and congratulations on your candidacy. Next speaker, Ms. Belcastro.
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Next speaker is Cheryl Gottlieb. Ms. Gottlieb?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so I'm going to try to make a whole bunch of points very quickly. So I just want to ditto basically what a lot of other people said, that I think that the accountability board needs independent investigatory power, independent counsel. The report needs to be made public, and that I also agree that it is a conflict of interest, not discrimination, to have former officers or family members of current or former officers on the board. And then I just wanted to make two quick points that haven't been made. So I've read this bill. I have not read the state bill. If it's possible, I think we should lower the age of members of the board to 16 and a half, because I think if you are old enough to be working a job in this county, if you're old enough to have a driver's license in this county, then you're old enough to be out in the community for, several hours a day, independent of any guardians that you have. And so it's likely that, kids of that age are going to be having interactions with police that are, not within view of any guardians. And so, the experiences of youth 16 and up need to be considered in this board. And secondly, I'm disappointed to see that there's no requirement that anybody with a disability be a member of this board. According to the CDC, 26% of Americans have some sort of a disability, whether it's, a mobility disability or psychiatric, or maybe they're hard of hearing, and then they get, into a unfortunate police interaction because they can't actually hear the commands from the police. So if we were using the same logic as, or the same metrics as Frederick County, or some of the other counties that were mentioned in earlier testimony, in a 9-member board, that would mean a requirement of at least 2 individuals that either, I would say, most impacted would be somebody with either a developmental / intellectual or psychiatric disability. And I think that is paramount, that that kind of experience is included. And along with that, as somebody who has both a developmental and a psychiatric disability, that make it so that I'm not able to drive. If the board is structured in such a way that in-person meetings are required, this county does not have reliable, accessible transportation.
So wrap up your comments.
Yeah, maybe not $10,000, but I think that some sort of a stipend that at minimum would cover private transportation, private accessible transportation, and childcare and things like that is absolutely essential. So with that, I'll wrap up.
Thank you very much for your comments. Ms. Belcastro, next speaker, please.
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Next speaker is Eric Blitz. Mr. Blitz?
Hello, Chairman Brown, Jones, and members of the council. Eric Blitz, I'm a Baltimore County resident living in Parkton in District 3. And as the chair of the Libertarian Party of Maryland, we urge support of Bill 2422 with amendments. Police accountability boards are an important step in bringing greater transparency and public accountability to policing in Baltimore County. I would urge the council to make sure that the board is vested with important procedural powers to aid in their core mission. Chief among these would be the power of the Administrative Charging Committee to issue subpoenas to compel testimony and obtain documents or other evidence from law enforcement agencies. The implementing legislation of HB 670 provided for subpoena power when it amended Section 3-104F1 of the Public Safety Article. But that power does not appear to be included in the County Bill 2422. It seems odd that the bill doesn't address the particulars of the Administrative Charging Committee and the trial boards, which I believe are appointed by the Accountability Board. And I would think the Administrative Charging Committee and trial boards need some form of implementing legislation to support their important roles, and concerned that not including those provisions for these two bodies may lead to weakening of their effectiveness. I would say that Bill 2422 should be amended to provide explicit authority and process rules for the issuance of such subpoenas so that there is no ambiguity as to the board's authority. Without subpoena power, such boards may find themselves stonewalled with partial or empty responses to inquiries and with little power to compel access to the important information necessary to carry out their functions. I would also urge you to look for ways to maintain political independence of the board. We echo the comments of others that the diversity of representation on the board is important, but so are the means of staffing and advising the board. Having the board represented by the county attorney is not optimal, and if you can't have an independent counsel full-time, we would urge that the standard for getting an independent counsel that's included in the bill remove the requirement that there be a conflict. The problem with having that language is that the determination of being alert to the existence of a conflict is typically a determination of the attorney, not the client. That's insufficient. You could delete from that clause in the event of a conflict on page 4, line 11 of the bill, and that would solve that issue. I would recommend you look for ways to ensure that the staff have the necessary independence from the county executive to preserve independence of the board. We would also recommend that board members appointed be subject to confirmation by the county council to help secure diversity. Finally, the county may benefit by putting some money into the training of the board members, both as to the scope of the board's authority and its processes, but especially as you launch this new initiative. You may gain some benefit from consulting with the National Association for Civilian. Yes, thank you. For civilian oversight, as they offer guidance and training in the Open Meetings Act. Thank you for considering my testimony and suggested amendments.
Thank you very much, Mr. Blitz. We certainly appreciate your comments and very precise. Next speaker, Ms. Belcastro.
Certainly, Mr. Chair, this is our last speaker this evening, Alan Katz.
I'm Alan Katz, a resident of Owings Mills in the 3rd Council District. I'm not someone who is likely to have an encounter with the police. My race, my economic status, and my age all mitigate against me likely having the police show any interest in me. However, a large percentage of Baltimore County's population cannot say that. We are living in a time in this country where large swaths of our citizens are feeling entirely out of the mainstream when it comes to decision making. And they are making themselves heard in some radical ways and not necessarily in good ways. Baltimore County is no exception. One way to overcome this slide into a dysfunctional society is to give people more say in governance. This applies not only to zoning, community planning, recreational opportunities, but yes, it includes policing. If we expect all county residents to believe that they belong and are included in the greater Baltimore County, then they must be given the opportunity to participate in the things most important to them. Creating and funding a police accountability board with actual power to impact public policy is the way to do this. Please pass this legislation with the recommended changes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Katz. And also, I'd like to take an opportunity on behalf of my colleagues to thank each and every caller who called in. We certainly appreciate your participation. Your thoughtful comments are very important to us. We will certainly take it all under advisement. And this is what makes government work better, is when citizens participate, as our last caller said. And we just thank you so much for taking the time to share your comments with us. Any other comments from any of the members? Okay, again, thank you so very, very much. And we will be taking everything you said under advisement and make some changes as necessary. And now I believe we're going to switch gears and switch channels, if you will, and come back. Why don't we all take a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back and